I wanted to record some thoughts on how to pick what to work on because I had a conversation earlier with somebody who booked in some time into my calendar and basically asked, like, oh, I kind of want to do this, I want to do that. How do I choose? Which one do I do? An old friend of mine actually who, basically is evaluating a lot of options in terms of what he can go work on now. And to me, I think I've spoken about this before, but like it had me thinking a lot about it. But I try and choose based on like, okay, what is your risk? What is your risk appetite, right? And within the options, so okay, what is your risk tolerance? So if you consider that you have a very high risk tolerance, then you look at high risk opportunities, and within those opportunities, you look at what is my best worst case scenario. So if this business fails, where am I getting the best outcome? And I say this because, for example, the SaaS business, the worst case scenario is usually pretty bad because you spend a bunch of time and you don't really make anything work. I say this in comparison to something like an agency business where even if nothing, like it's harder to fail completely. In SaaS you have to build a product and market it, whatever, and maybe nothing happens. Whereas in agency you have less downside before you realize that nothing's working. And then for example, running a product business, so running a proper like manufacturing a product, and I'm not talking about drop shipping, like a full-on fully fledged product business is probably the worst because your worst case scenario is even lower because you have a bunch of upfront costs. Drop shipping is a little bit better, but you have marketing costs. And so basically like evaluate within these opportunities which is my best worst case scenario, and then also evaluate within your own context where do I have the most network and opportunities and access, and then use Hormozy's framework to evaluate markets, which I think is a really good one. Which is, I think there are 4 key points, which is it growing, is it in high pain, does it have purchasing power, and is it easy to find? If you cannot find them, that's a problem. If they don't have purchasing power, that's a problem. If they're not in high pain, that's a problem. And if they're not growing, it's okay. But if they're like if it's a normal market, it's fine. But if it's a dying market specifically, that's what you don't want to, so you don't want to sell like to newspapers and stuff like that, because physical paper newspapers are mostly, dying out. And I think if you evaluate based on those 4 criteria, and then you ask yourself also, like, one of the key things that I said to him that I think a lot of people don't account for is how do you want to position yourself for the long run? And so the key question here is, where do you want to be? What kind of spaces do you want to be involved in over a 20-year time horizon? Because that may inform the type of business that you do. Because let's say you've decided you want to make an agency. Now, what kind of agency do you want to do? What kind of, like, it's not just about picking what to work on, but also who to work with. Who do I serve? What kind of services do I provide? Things like that. And that's when I start to ask, like, if you are a young person, think about it as choosing a university degree, right? If, like, the same way that you go to university and you choose the thing that you'd like to work in a few years, you can change, but that's the frame that you start from, right? Like, what is the thing that I'd like to keep doing for a while? And then you do an agency or a business around that. And fundamentally, it's a great business to learn because you get exposed, you get exposed to clients doing the thing that you might want to do someday without taking the risk that they have and still earning money on the way. That is the entire, I think for me, the biggest value proposition of an agency, because I'm interested in the tech startup world. I like tech products. I like building products. Like, that is something that interests me a lot. And I want to practice engineering. So I did a development agency because I practice all of those skills every single time I get a new client. And so when I was deciding what kind of agency to make, honestly, I kind of got caught up in the hype train of SMMA and stuff like that. And like, I never started it, but I considered it a lot. I had a friend who was doing it and he was getting some results. And then I started development and it didn't really work out for a while. And I was like, oh, this agency model is terrible. Like, a year and a half ago, I could literally give you so many reasons why development is a terrible agency. But really, all I was doing was I was making excuses for myself for why the agency wasn't growing. The reality was I wasn't being patient enough and I just wasn't doing the right things. I was not as far ahead as I wanted to be because I was not as good as I thought I was. It is as simple as that. Like, fundamentally, I was not as competent as I thought I was. And that is a hard reality to deal with, but I think an excellent one if you can get to that. But that is it's a really good starting point to think about where do you want to be. Like, for example, if you want to work, like an editing agency will teach you more about production and content and things like that. And so if you want to get more exposed to that, then build an editing agency, some kind of something around content, whether that's doing thumbnails or doing video editing or doing repurposing, like whatever it is, build around content because that's the space you want to be in. If you want to build tech products, build an agency around product. If you don't know how to build, so my friend, for example, he's not a developer, and he was like, oh, like I couldn't do development agency, whatever. Well, you can do a design agency, and that's still in product. And so you can absolutely still start there and work in the product space and learn from other startup. Like my entire thesis is that I basically get to work with the kinds of clients that I'd someday like to replicate. So I get to watch other people build tech companies, and I work super closely with these founders, and I'm observing and learning from them constantly. And that is one of the most valuable things about having this agency. It is not about, like, at the end of the day, an agency is a cash flow business, but like it's a great thing to get started, but I really see it as a university for business. Like I did not go to university, but I see these years that I'm spending building this business as my kind of process to learn that. And I think it's a very powerful business model to do that. To learn more about business, to establish yourself, and to get some fundamental skills. Like you remove idea and execution risk. I mean, this video, the point of this is not to pitch agency as a business model. It just, I've considered this a lot. I've thought a lot about it, and I'm confident in my decision for a bunch of reasons. But whatever business model you decide to do or whatever you decide to work on, you also want to have in mind long-term interests. And so think about, what is the least likely, or what is the best worst case outcome, right? Like what is the thing that if I fail still provides the most value? So assume failure in all your possible options, all your possible routes. Which one is the most interesting to you? And then align that with your long-term interests. And so you have to think a little bit about the kind of thing that you want to be in the long term. And I know there's a lot of interesting spaces. Like you always want to be a little bit a hard part of everything, but you want to at least start by kind of vaguely pinpointing a direction that you want to go in. For me, that was tech, but like just don't try and do everything because that's a very common mistake. But those are my thoughts on how to choose on what to work, how to choose what to work on at a high level. But yeah, anyway, today was really unproductive, honestly. I had a call that took way longer than planned first thing in the morning, and I didn't manage to do my work first thing in the morning, which was what I wanted to do. I did go out, bought some stuff. I recently upgraded I got this little kit from Belroy, this little pouch, and it's just so useful. Like I'm so happy with it. Just because like basically everything on my desk now fits into three things, which is it's either my laptop, this thing, which has a lot of cables and power banks, like a lot of useful stuff. And I used to have my notebook. I've switched that out for my iPad. But those are the only three things on my desk at all times. And maybe a water bottle. That's it. And so I can travel with that anywhere. So that was like probably the highlight of my day. It was just like I went out to buy a MagSafe charger, a little Belkin, not a Belkin booster battery pack, but like some other one that has a little bit more power. It's pretty good as well. But I wanted to do some work, which I didn't. And I spent the last 2-3 hours watching a bunch of like interesting interviews and presentations. Honestly, I think it was worth it though, as long as like I take actionable steps from those things, and I made a lot of notes on it. And so I think that's informed some decisions that I'm going to try and be making as well. But tomorrow morning, I am going to get to some of that essential work that really just needs to happen. And I've already got that list kind of pretty much made. So I'm going to have to sleep. It's like, 1 in the morning? Something along those lines. 1:15, so it's not too bad. So I'll still be able to get some decent sleep, probably be up tomorrow by like 8 or so, and just hop on first thing onto my laptop and get that important fundamental stuff that I've been struggling a little bit with. Right now my entire thesis is just like 2 to 3 hours of focused work. That's all that I think really needs to happen every single day, and from there, a lot of things can move. But yeah, if there are other, like, I'm currently on the lookout. Like, I want to keep making more tactical videos if people are interested in that stuff. Definitely comment about like questions about specific things. I'd love to answer those. So I keep a huge list of video ideas, and if you make a comment, you'll probably see a video like 2 weeks later about it. So that's the situation right now.